G'day and welcome again to the Campfire Project panel discussion. Today I have with me Angela Heise, who is a leadership coach and emotional productivity trainer. How are you, Angela?
Very well. Very excited to be here. Good topic. Great people. So
excellent. And then we have Kenny Mammarella D'Cruz, the founder of Men Speak. How are you, Kenny?
Same as Angela, thanks.
Oh, it's going to be like that, is it? We've already been laughing off screen, so I don't know what's going to come out of all of this. But and then we have Nicque Misa-Richards, who is a funeral director and marriage celebrant. How are you, Nicque?
I am also well, and I also like to party.
Well, we'll see where we can take this conversation then. So we always get together before these talks and have a bit of a chin wag about what we'd like to talk about, and we try and think about what things are affecting us or we're noticing in the environment. And relationships, trust, communication, and how to turn fear and misunderstandings into love and mutual supported growth is an area we thought we'd talk about today. And as we know that we all have a lot to learn from each other as men and women, the masculine, the feminine, being with different hormones and individuals from different inner and outer environments. So there is no two people on the planet who are identical. And so we've all got something different to bring to the table. And that's what we'd like to talk about today. So Kenny, would you like to start us off on the conversation here?
It's been busy since lockdown, incredibly busy. And we've been holding men's groups every day. And the women have started holding women's groups. I think there's a weekly at the moment. And a lot of people, it's like crazily, the men try to figure things out and fix them, including not just their own hormones and feelings, but female hormones and feelings. Meanwhile, it seems that not that many females often talk about their hormones to each other, leave alone to the men in their lives. So meanwhile, there are these men who turn into scared little boys because the wife or mother or girlfriend or whatever is going through something hormonal. And they're thinking, well, you know, the little boy in them goes, what have I done wrong and how do I fix this? How ludicrous is that? Meanwhile, males have hormones and don't quite sometimes know where to put themselves, or when the full moon's brewing and there's a short fuse or lots of energy, don't know where to put it, or even when they're little boys. It's like little boys are bad and the best way to control them is to withdraw from them and shame them because then they're controllable. Now, you know, these are like childhood hormones, and surely there needs to be space and a conversation around this rather than it's bad, it's secret, it's shameful, and then no one knows where they stand. So for me, the inner environment is what's going on inside, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, even socially, especially what's the rubbish that's going on in my head very often because it's not very true. And externally, well, if that's going on inside, then at some level, I'm going to react to that. And even through lockdown, I know so many people who've had sleep issues, and my God, does that screw with people. So I thought, I need to bring this to the campfire because surely giving voice to this would help everyone out and demystify what might be going on beneath the surface so we can collaborate better, we can love more, we can understand more, we can grow together. So that's where I am with it.
You know, Angela, your expertise is in the area of emotions. So what have you recognised along with lines of what Kenny's been talking about?
Oh, I mean, I agree with the sleep. That's been a real big issue for a lot of people because there's just so much anxiety going on. The future is more uncertain than ever. Things are shifting. There's so many aspects. It's not just COVID. There's so many other aspects shifting around at the moment that people are it's almost like playing Twister. You know, you just don't know where to put your foot next. So I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the hormonal, the one you're talking about, I'm not sure that, yeah, I mean, cortisol and adrenaline, I get that. And I don't know how men are impacted because, you know, you are the man whisperer. You speak to men. So what are the hormones they have? And I would really like to know. And when they talk about their partners being hormonal, I trust that doesn't mean the whole, I'm keeping a calendar because I know that she's, you know, she's getting a period. And so therefore I'm preparing myself for that, because that's, I tell you quite honestly, and Nicque is laughing, because that's one of the really weird things when you find out that somebody's keeping a diary on your hormonal cycle, and then puts it down, you know, any kind of emotion that a woman has then gets, you know, related to that. Whereas men have hormonal cycles as well. So are we talking about the fact that men are starting to acknowledge that, and that, you know, testosterone goes up and down and all of those things?
As well as the way that she's behaving, I must have done something wrong.
Really?
How do I put it right?
Okay, but that has nothing to do with hormones, does it?
It's to do with her hormones that he takes personally.
Okay.
So that's the big confusion. Meanwhile, if he's not educated about anyone's hormones, because an uncomfortable man or a confused man can instantly become a scared little boy. And children take responsibility for things that went wrong or things that go wrong. And my child is live and kicking in me and loves to play, and luckily gains information rather than making everything his fault and his to fix. Because as a child, to an extent, that's what I believe very often. And I think a lot of young people believe, well, it's for me to fix, especially if the parents can't for some reason, or if there's a tragedy, or if someone's sad, what have I done wrong? Or if someone's angry, I must have done something. Or if the parents divorce, then I must have done something really bad. And so it goes on. So from a very young age, there is a child who will blame himself or herself. And when, I can't say this about women because I work more with men, but it's very easy for a strapping, confident man to be crumbled into nothing because he's been withdrawn from or criticized and something's triggered. And it's like, what have I done wrong and how do I fix it? And sadly, these days, so many people turn either to their heads or to their computers, then another human being to find out what's going on.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I've got a son, so I've got a son and obviously a partner in my life, and yeah, it's surprising actually to hear you say that men resort back to them being little boys, and particularly around the hormone thing. I'm not as educated on the hormones that rage through men's bodies, probably like a vast majority, other than testosterone. You know, testosterone is what we identify with men, whereas women have a collaborative amount of hormones that then, you know, people sort of blame for the way women behave, but it might not just, I don't necessarily believe it's all hormone related. Yeah. But no, interesting to think about. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Alan, about my own son and what he may be going through, because I've come from a broken relationship with his father. Yeah, and part of my goal, I guess, as a mother has been to try and help raise him to be a well-rounded man. He's only just 16, but yeah, it's something to think through, I guess, and to learn more about with what may be going on for him, but I'm not yet aware.
It's funny that I think of that as far as us men, we're going through emotions as well. We've got things that are happening, and it depends on, we might notice something in our partner, a change in their hormones, but it depends on what state we're in to start with as to how much we notice that as well. So it's not so much that our partner is a certain way and therefore we go into that. If we're already feeling at a bit of a loss and everything else, because I know that in my relationships, the ones that broke up, I went from being extremely confident to very much the boy. I couldn't explain things, I couldn't communicate, not in the way that came across as who I felt I was in the first place. So we're affected by all that. And I don't know, you know, can't say, well, it starts here and therefore that flows on to here. it can start anywhere, and then that interaction just flows from there.
Mm. Mm.
So would that be something where you could, I mean, I'm just thinking through that, that when men turn into little boys because they feel criticized or they feel, you know, not, you know, cared for or whatever it might be, is that then when women turn into mothers?
Yeah, very often.
So
that
the
can be
little boy
way.
then responds to the mother role model that he's had, and then starts acting out the same kind of patterns in the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And or it could be a little boy who was adored by his mother and needs a replacement, who attracts someone who loves to mother. So there's that kind of thing going on as well. But I would say this is the time where if that's going to happen, then allow it to happen consciously rather than slip into it, and then it becomes resentment. Because I've got absolutely no problem of being a vulnerable little boy in front of my wife, or of being a very able man while she feels vulnerable and she becomes a little girl. But those aren't the only places we can meet. We also can meet as adults together.
Yes.
And we can also meet as children together.
Sorry, but you have to be able to shift back into adult. A lot of
Absolutely.
people get stuck in the parent-child, mother-son kind of relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say the way to do it consciously is to name what's going on maybe, or it might be if my wife hasn't had a good night's sleep or whatever's going on, and she's cranky or her behavior is different, for me to say, how have you slept? And then I know that maybe it's the sleep. And she might say, well, not great, so I might not be very bright today. Otherwise, I might think, and this is so common, she's acting a bit different. What have I done? What have I not done? How do I fix it? How do I behave differently? And then it's sheepish, disconnected behavior from the head, putting on a good act, trying to fix. Where's there the connection? Or it could be basically saying, I missed my best friend and I know he's busy, but the little boy in me feels abandoned. And by saying that, I'm naming what's going on as a man about what's happening with the child in me. And she can decide how she wishes to, you know, and she might give me a hug and I might feel better. And then we just carry on as normal. But that's consciously naming what's going on. And it really helps. It's really weird the way earlier on you mentioned a man or men taking notes of the cycles. A few years ago, we did something that's a little bit opposite to this, because my wife read a book by a friend of ours, Elizabeth Pope, and I think her book might be The Something Genie. She's done the Red Tent Communities, and it's all about the menstrual cycles, and now she's writing about the menopause and the 4 inner seasons. So we plotted it on the calendar so we know what's going on and we could manage it and enjoy it rather than it being this thing in the background that needs to be somehow pretend it's not going on or whatever. And it's like, how great to be planning this and to see when there's time for space and time for rest and time to maybe not be cooking or whatever it is. It's like, then there's space for life and some productivity around life rather than everything's inconvenient to do for the to-do list, which is surely the wrong way around.
The problem is that these cycles are generally used against women.
Crazy. Well, surely this is where the boys who use them against women need to grow into men and meet the women.
I agree.
And manage these things. So rather than it being good or bad, it's here's an opportunity. Here's another way to manage this. And it's not just menstrual cycles. There's perimenopause and menopause. There's everything that happens while during pregnancy and after pregnancy. You know, there's so much, and it's such a part of life. It's not a separate thing that people should be second guessing and shameful about. Surely, I mean, it's something that I'm learning so much more about. Not just about women, but about myself. Meanwhile, generally, it's this exactly, totally. It's ridiculous. And, you know, they're all bicycles made for one. There's no tandem. We go through very separate things that we can then bring to the party and understand what's going on. And if it's not, you know, it's not all about hormones. It might be, like I say, sleep or best friend or parents or fear or fantasy or bad dream or whatever. But how great to meet and say, this is what's going on. This is what I'm bringing to the party. And then there's information, and then there's sharing. There's, you know, feasting on the freak show of lockdown life.
Does anybody know a sign writer? Like a, you know, so we can actually get that written in the sky or something. Men have hormone cycles too. Because I'm not sure a lot of men that I know in my life actually are aware of it.
Really?
Well, you know,
Yes. Yeah, really.
Wow.
I reckon that's absolutely true as well, because men will feel a shift and everything else, but they'll look outside themselves for something to blame for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, with men, there's nothing you can actually see that's physical, but with a woman's menstrual cycles, yes, there is something there. So therefore, we can focus on what we can see and therefore not have to focus on the other. And if men are lost little boys, then that's the way they're going to go. It's the mature males, the ones who have become men, who will be looking at understanding as opposed to running away from everything like the boys. Because I think we've had these conversations before. Being a man or being a woman has absolutely nothing to do with age. It's all to do with the quality of your heart, what you've learned, your maturity. And so when they say there's no such thing, you know, women say, oh, I can't find a good man. And I go, well, you know, or a real man, well, there's just men or there's boys. They're all males, but they're either boys or they're men. You know, you measure them by their behaviours and who they are. And men will always be supportive of women, not put them down. The boys will put them down because that's how they deal with their own inadequacies. As opposed to where you've said, Kenny, is to recognise and name what it is and be vulnerable enough, and the courage of vulnerability to actually say, well, this is what it is in me. This is what I recognise.
I think it comes from awareness. Yeah, it comes from awareness. And I think as well, where does that start? Because, you know, I'm just thinking about, while I'm listening while you're talking and thinking that, you know, there's generations and generations of men who've been silenced because, one, it's not manly to cry. You don't talk about your feelings. You know, it's this traditional, you know, men go out to work, women stay home kind of thing that's been going on for generations and generations. And only, I mean, you all could probably give me or help me sort of articulate this, but however long it's been that women are starting to be seen more as equals and can go out to do work and everything else that what men would traditionally do. But men, I feel like, and again, please educate me on this, but I feel like men have remained in that silent, strong, supportive, protective, you know, that hunter-gatherer kind of role where we're seeing that these are, you know, what's bringing about some of the problems and why we've got Movember and all of those other support groups available for men. But how do we create awareness? And again, bringing it back to me being a mum of a boy, where do we draw this information from to be able to incorporate this in our parenting and in our social networks to teach men about what they not what they should be doing, but
what they could be doing.
What they could be doing, and you know, that awareness of what you were saying about, you know, being the little boy and then being able to identify and then being able to have the emotional intelligence to then to be able to communicate without fear and ego and everything else that I guess comes in the way.
It's like I keep saying that everything that, if I want to see a change, I've got to be that change. I also look at it from the point of view that if I look at, well, the number of men who are victims of domestic violence, who don't put their hands up, the number of men who you know, have a car accident where they hit a tree and it's the only tree in sight. You know, how many times are they actual suicides, not having fallen asleep at the wheel? Or they go off the road at the most weird spots and get, you know, they hit a tree or a rock or something and, you know, and a boulder and they die. So men will go through that as opposed to turn around and say, hey, I'm lost, I need help, I need support.
That is so spot
I
on.
think it comes back into the family.
Absolutely.
Where this is where we keep talking and asking women for guidance. I think this is where women can really help their partners by stepping up and saying, hey, for you to be able to open up and speak in that way, I don't see you as being a lost little boy. I see you as showing me the other side of you so that you can show me how to be you're a complete male, complete man.
Yeah.
And it's with the women who can guide us through to that point. And then at that point, because I know with my ex-partners where I felt really lost is when there was no real connection. There was no understanding of that. And I felt like, I turned into a little boy and they were the mother.
You know,
so I had that connection.
What's just crossed my mind is so often over the years and over the countries in playgrounds, I've seen little boys and little girls play school. And generally, it's scared, heartbroken little boys who want to be included. And little girls, naughty boy, now you have to go, and it's like that. It's criticizing little girls because this is what teachers do and this is how to play. And broken-hearted little boys who are not just scared of being criticized or excluded, but also the tragedy of a little boy's best friend running off with another best friend and being abandoned. That's how delicate little boys are. And that's where such a big, strong front of I'm fine, nothing touches me, I'm angry, I'm robust, all of that is to cover this sensitive soul. And such a sensitive soul, sadly, so often would rather die than die of embarrassment. And these are passing thoughts, feelings, pains, things that can control and hurt so much. And I need to stop this pain and I don't know how to do it. And I've tried everything else. So thankfully, we talk about these things in the men's groups because it's driving people towards the edge. And three little words that are so important. How are you? But after how are you, there needs to be a gap, because usually when people ask, how are you? They've already decided how you are, what you're going to say and how they're going to respond. And basically the bloke will generally think, what does she want to hear? Or what does he want to hear? So I put on the right show and I'm off the hook because I'm not going there. But when that space is invited, and then maybe reflective listening after that, so you're saying that actually you're okay, but you're a little niggled because of lockdown, you feel a bit out of control or whatever. So it's just actually being heard. It's like, wait a minute, you heard what I said, rather than we just say fine and then run away and put on a bad show or something. But I think the second guessing is a huge thing that men have inflicted on us from each other, as well as from women, as well as from closest friends and colleagues and parents and God knows everyone. It's like, I'm not allowed to say, I'm not allowed to be weak or get it wrong. Meanwhile, please, for heaven's sake, say, so we all know what's going on. And so everyone, including the sons and the co-workers and the friends, are allowed to say, actually, I'm a bit stuffed up right now, and this is why. Because it doesn't, and this is the second thing, if something's up, then be with what's up, rather than fix it or upstage it or dramatize it. Just be with what's up, because very often, I'd say both with male and female, when something is named, and when we meet in this place of pain or confusion, and we're just with it, then it shifts.
But you need to have emotional awareness around that. And or you're not just the emotion, but every emotion is linked to a need. And that's why I don't like negative and positive emotions. I use the word pleasant and unpleasant, because there's no negative emotion. When it feels unpleasant, it just means our need is not being met. So when I'm frustrated, I might not achieve something. So my need for achievement isn't being met. Or when I'm feeling desperate, I might have, again, I lack that connection. So when you connect those, and when you teach children to connect those two things, they start expressing themselves in a different way. They become more self-confident. But when the need is not acknowledged, like I had somebody who posted a story on Instagram just today, and she posted a video of her little son crying himself to sleep in the background. And she said, this is the time for tough parenting. He needs to learn how to be, and I said to him, you're a big boy now, and you need to be able to manage this. And we turn off the light and you can sleep in the dark. And I wrote her a note and I said, please do not do this. What you are doing is you're teaching your son to shut down his emotions. What about saying, I hear that you're scared. I hear that you want connection. That sounds like big words, but when children get the context over and over again, they understand what that means and they learn how to express themselves. And they can say, Mommy, I'm scared. I want some company right now, or I want to feel safe. And I can tell you that works because I know that there's a set of cards that you can buy from one of my teachers who teaches nonviolent communication. And she's designed these cards for children. And I've given them to my friends who have children. And I get photos all the time where the children hold up an emotion with a need and saying, this is how I feel right now, and this is my need. And these are kids that are 5 and 7 years old who are very able to say that. And the little boy specifically is smart as a whip around that. He will sit there and pinpoint how he feels immediately.
And that's the difference, is educating at the early ages. The mother you just mentioned, given time, there'll be some time in the future where she'll be complaining she doesn't see her son, he doesn't come around, he doesn't care, and he forgets birthdays and everything else, then we'll wonder, what's wrong here? What have I done wrong? Well, you just pointed out to her what she did wrong in the first place, already educating her son to shut down.
It's so sad, isn't it? Sorry, Alan.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's so sad, isn't it, when you see if a little boy will fall over and hurt themselves in the playground or something, and you'll have a parent or even a teacher say, brush it off, get up, and they could, and they don't let them cry, they don't let them express themselves, they don't give them comfort. My heart breaks for them and I feel like giving them a hug, but, it's terrible when you see that happening, because it's exactly what you're saying. They're just teaching them and reinforcing that, one, their feelings don't matter, that maybe even it might extend to the point where they feel like they don't matter, and then they reflect that internally with themselves, that, okay, it doesn't matter what I feel because nobody's asked or nobody cares or nobody showed me comfort as I grew up. And then they grow up and to be remain boys, I guess, and not be able to develop into a full man because they haven't learned how to deal with their own emotions and know that it's safe to express themselves or not express themselves.
And children don't need a lot. When a child falls over and hurts themselves, all they need is somebody to say, that must really hurt. What do you need right now? And the child will tell you what they need. Instead of saying, I will fix that for you, as you said, Kenny, immediately jumping in and I'll kiss it better or whatever it is, but saying, what do you need right now? And I've seen this with children. When you ask them and you teach them how to think that way, they are very, very able to articulate what they need. I mean, and I can tell you stories about children who organized a whole group of people around their needs, because it was like, what do you need right now to feel okay? That would be, this would help, and this would help, and this would help.
I feel that everything that we've said about children definitely applies to adults. And not only that, surely the way is to be that, just as Alan said, be that in the world. So we normalize it and it's normal for children. And listening to this conversation now, I feel a lot more power in the room, because it's, we know what's going on. And we know exactly what to do to break the spell. So it actually works for everyone. So it's better for everyone. And that is a huge relief. And with lockdown and insomnia and, who knows what's going on, this is so the time to speak. We need to, I mean, breaking the silence has saved so many lives. We're holding groups every day now and people come from all over the world, and it's absolutely magnificent, not just to be safe, but to laugh together, to say, check this out with, this is what's going on in my life, and it could be good, bad, or ugly. But check this out is, I'm going to include myself in this. I'm going to tell you what's going on without filtering what kind of a show I'm putting on. And that can be a game changer, because so many men aren't allowed to open their mouths unless they and their friends are drunk, for example. And then, oh, it wasn't me talking, it was the alcohol. And people can be surrounded by people and be desperately, desperately lonely with a small problem or a fear or an issue that goes to their head and grows and grows and grows and takes everything over. And then the women and the children might think, well, what's up with him? What's going on? Better not ask. And this is the whole thing with men, women, and children, is better not ask. Maybe I did it wrong and maybe I'm in trouble, rather than, how are you? What's going on? Again, break the spell. And the name of the game at the moment, especially since lockdown, is people are speaking, thank God. And I don't know about you lot. I mean, I do know about Australia, actually. I love Australia and how open people are. And I didn't realize until I moved over to Australia, or until I left the UK, how classist it is over here, because it's so normal and invisible. And how many little boys were sent to boarding school. And that's where their life training and survival has come from. That's where they've been programmed to be in a certain way, which isn't good or bad. It's just facts. And then the positions they find themselves in and the needs that they have that they don't know how to articulate, and they're programmed to play a certain role. And I find it absolutely wonderful how these little boys, who turn into very often powerful men or broken men or everything in between, also show up and say, something's not right. And that's happened for me more during lockdown, with the jet set high flyers, with those that can get fixes of sex and drugs and rock and roll and everything else. And suddenly the fixes are gone, even the gym's gone, everything's gone. And they're thinking, actually, there's something not quite right here. Or, God, now there's no sports and no soaps and no drinking and no hanging out with my buddies. We got nothing to say to. Who are they? What are these people doing around me? The questions and the opportunities that have come up during lockdown are also phenomenal, including people saying, I need to be physically touched. Where it's not that long ago where people would sneakily get a fix of physical touch and it was never mentioned and it was never a thing. Suddenly humanity is demanding attention while we're being deprived. And this is such a golden opportunity for us to bring back the connection of the fears, the fantasies, the truth of what's going on, and exhibit these things and explore these things, because, you know, we're all on Zoom, no one's going anywhere.
That's been one of the good things about it all, is that, yeah, it took away the class difference. You know, everybody's in the same boat, everybody's in lockdown, so the differences started to disappear. The only time I've seen that in the past was in the surf club. You know, everybody's in their swimmers and that, all in budgie smugglers, and everything from the paediatrician, the doctors, right through to people who are looking for jobs, students and everything else. It's a great leveler. Well, there's a terrible thought. Maybe we all should go back to wearing budgie smugglers and see how that goes. I'll see if I leave that image in your head. Sorry about that.
That was a good analogy, I thought.
And we're back. You know, I had a funny, go on.
Yeah, I think it's quite important that, you know, we realise that it's getting to that point where we realise we're not different, in the fact of, you know, what we all want in our lives to be, you know, we feel like we contribute, that we have a place and everything goes. Recognise that we're all different, and therefore being able to stop and ask a person, not expect if they're behaving in a certain way, oh, they must be feeling this. But I love the point that you mentioned there, Angela, with that child, asking them, you know, or just saying to them, first of all, that must have hurt, because you're acknowledging it. You're not putting the, you know, running over and pampering them and that and making them feel that you're wrapping them in cotton wool, and you're not saying to them, toughen up. but because both of those are two extremes, which are just as abusive to it as each other, but recognizing the middle and saying, hey, that must have really hurt. And they recognize that and then take that into a conversation. You know, that's when you can say, oh, brush it off. What does it feel like when you rub it? Is it still sore, etc.? Have a conversation. You're allowing them to actually open up and express themselves, which the, toughen up is locking them down. And the same as wrapping them up in cotton wool is doing it as well. And it's also demasculating them in the process.
By calling them a little girl. Don't act like a little girl.
Yeah.
We're just putting boys and girls down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Can I revisit how you just the suicidal thoughts that you were talking about, Kenny? I've been down that path personally, and you were saying that it's really important for people, to ask them how they are and that kind of thing. In my experience, I completely isolated. I had people ringing to see if I was okay, having gone through a relationship breakdown due to finding out that my husband had cheated our entire relationship, 12 years, 2 children. That I felt like, and I think that people may identify with this as well, is when you're going through so much on such a large scale, for me anyway, I didn't know how to handle it. So I didn't feel like I could help other people handle it for me, if you know what I mean. So I felt like my only option was to isolate. And as you were saying, it then becomes this bigger thing. You by isolating, it's probably one of the worst things that I could have done, although luckily I'm still here. But one of the worst things I could have done was isolate, because it did just become all about my bubble. Whatever was going on in my head started to manifest into something much larger and much larger, and that was my sole focus. Yet at the same time, when people did try to ask me how I was, my throat would close, my tongue would thicken, and I literally physically couldn't speak. But I feel like, actually talking to you all now in retrospect, maybe there were definitely signs that I was in a lot of trouble, that people probably should have maybe come around to my house, not just tried to ring and leave a message. But if I can encourage anybody that may be going through, feeling alone or feeling like they're going through something and they are isolating, and particularly going through COVID and everything else that's happening, that is probably not the best decision. Is don't isolate. Really, really reach back out to people who are reaching out to you, or just reach out to somebody, or if they're not feeling comfortable to make a phone call, to text somebody, or particularly in the funeral industry, there's been a lot of suicide. Death across Australia has actually reduced this year, just due to the fact that not many people were on the roads, and there was a lack of cross-contamination on all sorts of different illnesses, not just corona, but unfortunately, obviously, suicide has increased. And that has also been with children in Year 12. We've heard a lot, particularly with the lead up to the HSC. There was a lot of Year 12 students that were taking their own lives, whether it was due to the pressure or the isolation, or the fear of not knowing what was going to happen beyond this year. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's it's worrying.
Thank you so much for saying that. What you brought to the table is very, very, very important. And one thing that we have done, well, people do come to the groups and say quite regularly, I'm having suicidal thoughts and feelings. And what a relief that people say it. And we are very non-hierarchical and open in the groups. No one has any answers, but we all have life experience. So that would be opened into a round of who else has felt suicidal. How do you manage it in yourself when you are there? What has brought you through? in the past, and what do you need when you're there? So people are very clear about tendencies to isolate and needs, and there are clear options for connection. And also a reminder that it passes, because when I'm in dark places, then my feeling is I have always been here. I will always be here. This is all there is. And there's nothing I can do to fix it. And it gets so logical and so disconnected from anything and anyone and life that it's, well, the only option is to remove myself from the situation. Now that's so cold and so logical. And I basically, you know, say to people, stop thinking. There's only one option, because thinking is trying to be in control and fix, and life can't be controlled or fixed, and neither can you. And you don't need fixing. There's nothing. That's the biggest thing that people find out coming to groups, is they're not alone. They're not different. They don't need fixing. They need space to be. It's not all the pressures of doing and doing it wrong and not keeping up. It's space to be. So people get to remember that this passes, it all passes, and they learn from other people about how it passes, and they remember themselves about what helped it pass last time, and it starts to break the spell and break the bubble. And by no means am I a suicide expert or an expert in anything much, really, because I don't think you need to be an expert to be human, and just show up and not expect the person who is in trouble to necessarily be articulate. Just to be there can be plenty. Just to be heard rather than interrogated. Just to sit in the room and listen while other people are talking, whatever people need, and with respect to boundaries. But what you bring to the table is so, so important.
Just to follow on from that, which might be some advice, you know, for me to get what took me through my journey was I did feel like I was alone. However, and you know, it was a very, very black 2 years, and I felt like I was in a very deep hole. But I have to be completely honest and say that I actually wouldn't change my past for anything. Even though I went through that experience, I went through suicidal thoughts for years, you know, still having children and was still contemplating taking my life. I am so grateful for the experience, because as hard as it was and as black as it was, I have grown into a completely different person that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of myself for getting through the other side. I'm really, yeah, I'm happy with who I am and where I've, you know, how far I've come. And I think, you know, you hear that as a cliche that, you know, in the darkest times is when you grow and all of those kind of things. It is honestly, it really, you don't see it at the time, but when you get through the other side and you look back and it's immeasurable. So hang in there. We all need you.
That's it, because everyone's got a value. There's all those people around, and we don't realize how many people we impact. And so if we disappear, the impact that we have on those people, and it's usually a very detrimental to them, not so much that people are happy that you're gone, but the fact that really knocks them around. The thing that you were talking about there, Kenny, when you said that someone, you know, one of the men will say where they're feeling, and then other people will talk about what they've been through. That's like the acknowledgement of the little boy who's, well, that must hurt, because now you're doing it in a very subtle way that other people are going, well, that's the way I felt as well. That's a justification for that person to realize that, yes, you can feel that way because others have done it. And this is where personal stories are so important, to share those with other people, because you're talking about, you recognize what they're going through because you've been through it. You've also shown that you found some light at the end of the tunnel. You found a particular way that worked for you. You get enough people talking about that, they can then look and go, well, that pathway, maybe not that pathway, but that person's pathway, yeah, that might work for me. And so people then get advice without somebody standing there saying, this is what you should do, because none of us need experts telling us what we should do. But we, you know, to have people who've got compassion, who are telling their stories, we can relate to that. And if we can relate to it, the pressure we put on ourselves is reduced at the same time. Because a lot of it is the pressure that we put on ourselves of expectations of what we think everybody else thinks and what we should be doing.
It's that non-judgment, that the ability to hold space for somebody and saying, it's okay no matter how you feel. You don't have to feel any different to the way you feel right now. It's perfectly okay. But we have to, and I have to say, I had to learn to include myself in that, because I actually just had to, and Alan knows that, I just took some time out because I was in a space where I just went, I can't do anymore. It was burnout. I mean, empathy burnout, compassion burnout, whatever you want to call it. And just, I had, I mean, and Nicque would know, I had 10 deaths in the last year and a half. Not just normal, you know, like just regular, occasional, you know, these were people in my close circle.
Wow.
Suicides, terminal illness, you know, and it was just coming. And I came to a place where I just couldn't do it anymore. And it was a place where I was going, I have to keep going, I have to keep going. And the people around me were going, no, you don't. No, you don't. And they were unconditionally supporting me. They would check in with me when I reached out and said, I'm just exhausted, I can't do this any longer. They would just listen. And I recovered, not in the 2 weeks that I thought it was going to take. That was a little bit overambitious. But within 6 weeks, I was back on my feet. And as we were talking about, the insomnia and all of that disappeared. And that was because I was surrounded by people who just said it was okay for me to be the way I was. There was no fixing. There was no, come on, you need to go out for walks. You need to get out of bed. They knew I was doing the best I could. And when I was up for a walk, I was the first out of the house. And it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, to have acknowledgement from other people that they recognize that there are things going on. They're not trying to be experts and tell you what you should be doing, but as Penny says, you know, holding that space for the other person so that they can be. Well, we are human beings, so they can be in that and be able to know that there are other people around if they need to call on them.
And it's that we learn to ask for help, you know, because we just keep soldiering on and going, I can do this. And my experience is specifically with men. And I'm saying, I'm totally generalizing here, but let's say, like when a woman has a problem, she often goes to her girlfriends and says, I've got a problem. And there's no fixing, there's just the talking about it. There's like, I'll just hold the bucket while you vomit, basically. But my experience is when a man has a problem and it's like, okay, I'll go out with my mate. They come back and they've had a beer and they've talked about the footy, but they have never talked about the issue. They feel temporarily better about what was going on, but they haven't really resolved. They haven't really vented. They haven't really let go what was bothering them. They have just painted over it.
Nice little distraction to get us away from it, which is the opposite of what Kenny's been saying about, you know, sitting in that space and naming it and feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy. One of my cheap lines is to name it, not shame it or blame it. And blame can be, well, it's because of this in my childhood and this in my this and whatever. That doesn't help things shift. And shame, I can't talk about it because blah, 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 I should be. But that's all putting it in the future and unreachable. Where naming it breaks the spell immediately. And shame turns into power because there's authenticity. And then everyone's allowed to be real and everyone's allowed to show up, and it's no longer a no-go area. But this has turned into a vital conversation, and I'm so grateful because it's both environments. And I found as my outer environment is restricted, And I feel so many people around me have piled on their to-do lists, because we're on lockdown. I could do so much and achieve so much, and so many people need to rest, that these to-do lists and being plugged into the computer, which also tells me what to do and how fast to do it. And I can't keep up with automation. It's ridiculous. But these to-do lists are just grinding people down. It's like, no, there needs to be space to be, and not the overwhelm of, I have failed my computer and my to-do list, and I shouldn't even take a break, because these 5 minutes could really get me ahead of what? It's ridiculous.
Yes. It's in business. We have what they call it accountability partners, where we have somebody who makes, checks on to see whether we did what we said we were going to do. I'm lucky enough to have a few accountability partners around me, like Angela, who keep asking me, have you taken time out? Are you still pushing yourself? So I get a few people reminding me. So again, Angela, thank you for all of that. I don't appreciate it at the time, but I do appreciate it later. When there's that driving force, I got to do it. And you're going, hang on, Alan, you got to take some time. Oh, yeah.
I'm just asking, when is the last time you've taken time off?
Yeah, and that's the beautiful part of it.
At 10 o'clock at night, and I see it and I go, really?
But as you say, it's the asking of somebody, not the telling of them, which is the important thing. And knowing that, people that ask, who are asking you are doing it because they care, whereas people who are telling you, it's because they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like emotional empathy and compassionate empathy. The emotional, I can feel your pain, but I don't want to feel it. So, try and shove it down, keep it quiet, put it in the back, drawer in the trailer behind you. Whereas compassionate, I can see your pain, I can feel your pain, but okay, let's see if we can find a solution to this together.
You've touched on something that's fundamentally important. Since lockdown, I've been training more and more people to hold groups. The most important aspect is to be able to feel our own feelings as facilitators, because whatever's going on with someone else, I need to access that in myself, because then I can be with this person, rather than, I'm not going to go there. I'm feeling uncomfortable, so I'm going to talk you out of it so I can feel safe again. That's fixing.
Yeah.
And that's, none of us are going there. We're all surviving, no questions. But the magic of being able to, it's almost like the man in me can hold me safe. So the boy in me can drop into trauma safely, knowing that it's not happening now. And from this place, I can connect to another person and truly be with that person. And it's not a big, long, drawn out, clever thing to do. It's in a moments. And during lockdown, with all these things to do, I've really learned that it's not the length of time I need, it's the quality of time. It's the depth of time. That's where I get nourished. That's where I get fed, because with the work I do, I'm stupid busy. And it's not just with clients. I've put the ebook out. I've got daily groups and God knows what. It's time to serve. It's time to connect. It's time to live the world that I wish to be in, into being. And if I'm changing the gear now, and I'm not sure.
That's what I learned. It's about respecting yourself as well, to say, I need to be mindful of my own needs and not just the world.
Otherwise, cheap martyrdom.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's also, wait a minute, I'm behaving like this, and now you owe me, and you need to do this. What is this kind of manipulation? May as well, it's the, you mentioned nonviolent communication earlier on. And I remember in the early days, I had some very clever friends who used it as the most precise passive aggression possible. Reason being, first step for me with nonviolent communication is a heart connection, and then everything starts. Otherwise, passive aggressive city, but heart connection first. I need to connect with myself. And then I can connect with you, rather than I'm going to avoid myself, I'm going to save you, and then you need to take care of me. And then we're blissfully codependent, and no one's going to leave the victim club, are we?
Yeah. And we look at all that and we turn around and we go, that's all childish behaviour, but who's doing it? The adults.
Yeah.
And they go, okay. So we've all got these tendencies, and therefore appreciating that, take the pressure off ourselves and stop trying to be perfect, because none of us are. And I don't want to be perfect. I'm certainly not looking for the perfect partner, because if I was, I'd then have to live up to that partner, and that would be terrible, because I'd be under pressure all the time. So I like my faults, as Nicque had said. I am the person I am, all the stuff I've been through. At the time, I would have loved to have changed some of those things, but now, no, because it's made me who I am. And I do like who I am. Not only like it, I respect it. And that's the difference. But I was just looking at the time there, and that if I'm going to put each of you on the spot here and ask you for what, when I always ask for advice, it's always something that you feel that you should do yourself, or something you've done before, but doing it in a way in which other people can listen to it and go, yeah, that would work for me as well. So on that side of, self-care, of looking after ourselves, what advice, with the conversation we've been having, what advice would each of you have to share with the audience who are listening? Could I start with, who'd like to start? Any volunteers? Okay.
I'm cool to start. This is a cheap cartoon that springs to mind of a little old lady holding a handbag, standing in front of the Grim Reaper and looking up and saying, "Nice hoodie." And basically the caption is flirting with death. And there are times when, for whatever reason, things like that cross our minds, or have crossed my minds and a lot of people in my life. And I'm thinking, well, do you know what? When I do flirt with death, I don't need to be the victim or the little one that's out of control. I could kind of just look death in the eye and go, nah, not today. Or 3, 2, 1, flip it, or words to that effect, and it's gone. Break the spell. When do I wish to stop thinking this? How do I wish to break the spell? And the other thing is, I listen to my inner DJs and they play some funky stuff, and I'm allowed to get into the groove and out of that groove. That's the power I have. That's the power of your inner DJs.
Beautiful. Okay, Angela.
Self-care. Well, remember, I always have to remind myself, and the people I work with, because self-care is always the first thing that drops out. We're very good at taking care of everything around us. And self-care is not just, it is, but it's more than sleeping well, eating well, drinking lots of water, exercising. It's about being gentle with ourselves. It's also about recognizing when we are tired. And instead of powering through, it's about saying, I am tired. I really need some time out. And again, it's about negotiating. Sometimes it's good to have solitude, just to be alone and to recharge that way, especially when somebody's an introvert. We need to have that time by ourselves. But then there's also the time to say, I really need to hang out with somebody, and go, but not go from that needy place of going, I need to hang out with somebody, I'm feeling so alone, because that's the needy child. But saying, it's really important for me to have some connection, and then contribute to that connection, rather than being the black hole that sucks, because that is their energy vampires out there. It's like, and I can smell them a mile away. When they want to connect, it's not because they want to share the space, but they just want to grab. And so self-care means also to spend time with people who recharge. There's a give and take. And the more we learn how to do that, to ask for and to give, I think the easier it's going to be to say, you know what, I need some self-care. I need some time out. And in a world where Tenny says, well, we're run by apps and by computers, and it's all about, let's keep going. I think we need to start listening to that and feeling it.
Excellent. And Nicque?
A lot of thoughts. I'm just going to try and quickly collate some thoughts. A couple of things for me is about being still and, you know, just protecting your energy. So I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing who either sucks my energy or who can feed energy. And I think that becoming more aware of myself and what I need or what I feel comfortable with or not comfortable with, but just sort of stopping and being still has helped, particularly in my industry, in the funeral industry. And maybe, Kenny, we might need to chat about starting up a group to help people in the industry, because you know, we deal with grief and tragedy on a very, very close basis, and it's not our grief more often than not, obviously. And how to process all of that and to talk about how we feel, because as we've mentioned before, you know, you kind of hold yourself in a particular way to try and meet other people's needs and be all and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Alan, even as you were saying, where I'm just as human as everybody else, I feel feelings about what other people are feeling. So I've had to learn, particularly in the industry that I'm in, to just stop and just be with my feelings, you know, appreciate that they're just feelings, that they still will pass, that there's a silver lining on every cloud. And that's, you know, that's what I sort of focus on, is trying to have an optimistic outlook, and that life is worth living. And just to look, I'm rambling. I'm rambling. I didn't collate that very well.
You're making very good sense. And I remember when I was an altar boy, doing lots and lots of funerals, how it would affect me. I'd be more upset, or maybe had more access to emotions than the grieving, who were safely talking about the quality of the pork pies or the weather or whatever it is. But it's a big deal to be carrying this. I've often wondered about this. What an interesting conversation to have with other people in the industry.
We definitely need it. There's not enough support for, you know, anybody that has anything to do with constant death. And also learning how to handle people who don't know how to deal with their own grief. A lot of it gets projected onto you. And that can be really difficult to just know that it's not your stuff, that it's their stuff, and appreciate that they're going through grief. And, you know, they've got all of this, you know, family things will come up as well, not just whatever they're going through. And then they project that onto people like myself, and it can be really difficult to know how to really keep that barrier up and protect myself.
What an interesting, sorry,
Go ahead, Kenny.
I was just going to say, what an interesting thing to bring to the fire is our relationships to death, before, during and after. It's such a fundamental part of life. I feel very lucky that I've experienced it in various countries, including working for the Home for the Dying in Calcutta. And my God, that changed my life. It was a totally, and I'm dying to tell you what I want to have done with my ashes, but I'll tell you about that in the death episode, maybe. I've got the idea of a lifetime. I'm going to be so much more useful dead than alive.
I don't know whether you should hold back. I'm interested.
Do we have time?
I got a feeling you're not going anywhere. Come on.
I'm just about to rewrite my will. I'd really like to know. Yes.
Well, I thought, you know, it's all about life, isn't it? So surely, you know, Catholics aren't supposed to be cremated, but hey, I'd rather know for sure I'm dead. I don't want to be, you know, so I'm going to get burnt. And then I thought, well, what could we do with the ashes? And I thought, obviously, it's about time, and the egg is the symbol for life. Egg timers. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe, and how useful, and how many different people can be served by little Kenny egg timers? And I thought, well, maybe my ashes might be a little bit too fine, a little bit too light. And I thought, there you go, glittery egg timers, because then we're actually celebrating life and it's sparkling while it goes. What do you think?
Yeah, well, we'll probably have to connect you with Alison Oakenden, because she does DNA gifts, where they take things like the ashes and turn it into jewelry, so that people, their loved ones, can carry that with them. They have that connection still. So,
no, that's weird.
But I love the idea. I love the. You're saying it's weird. I love the idea of the egg timers. Yeah, there it is. Kenny's over there. He's telling me to get a move on. Time's running out. But one of the things I would say to all of those, especially the people who are caring for others, you have to get selfish to be selfless. If you want to be able to help other people, you can't do it if you're run down, because the more run down you are, the less you're able to do for other people. And so it is important to get selfish so that you can be the best version of yourself for other people. And that way then is in get the right people around you, find out how to let go of those things, because if you don't have the skills to getting rid of it, it's just going to mount up, and therefore you're going to not be any good for anybody else around you. And if your passion is to be a carer and to be helping other people, you need to address that side of it. I think that's quite important.
One of my teachers actually reframed that, because she said both selfless and selfish have such negative connotations, or you know, when you're selfless, you become, you know, that literally not such a good thing for a lot of times. She said, well, how about we call it selfing? I like that.
Yeah, so when you bring the two words together, you've got a new word.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for people to first of all understand it, you know, I understand those two things, bring it together, and I like that selfing.
Yeah, I had a selfing time.
Can I flash my cardboard cutout?
What was that, sorry?
Can I flash my cardboard cutout?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, this is the cover of my ebook. And once it was out, I just thought, because it's this file on a computer and you press buttons and you get it. There's nothing physical. So I had to print out something physical for it to actually exist. Do you know what I mean? And I'd say so much of life happens on a computer. And it's like, did it happen? Did that count? Everything and everyone was exactly the same font at the same size with no style, or, you know, it's like, did it happen? And it's connections and printouts and something real named and shared. That's real. That's happened. Otherwise, there's so much doing and there's a grief, because at the end of the day, how many emails do I have? And that's how I measure myself. And there's more and more and more pressure. And, you know, the selfing, well, that's the being time, and that's life.
And so for me, connections is the most important thing. Yes, connection with other people, but also connection with my own emotions, connection with downtime, connection to nature. So we're always connected, but we just shift the connection to be able to have a full life, which I think is quite important for all of us. I know it is for me. But just watching the time, we're marching on. I think we've actually been over an hour, which is normal. But these conversations, we get together, as you said, Kenny, there's just so much rich knowledge that comes out of everybody who comes along and shares their experiences and what they've been through. So, yeah, very much thank Angela, Nicque and Kenny for being here today and sharing this. And I think there will be further conversations to carry on, like the sequels. I think there's plenty of options for that. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
And to everybody who's been listening in, I hope you get a lot out of it. And again, as I always say, you want some answers in your own life. You've got 3 experts here, or 3 what I call authorities, people who really have a good understanding, a good grip. And you've already seen how they talk to people. So reach out if you need connections and have a chat with them. And we'd love to see your comments on the bottom of these videos as well, what you got out of it, and also what suggestions on what you feel that we can do more for you to help you as well. So again, guys, thanks very much for being here. And to everybody else, we'll see you on the next campfire. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.